The Allied powers deployed an astonishing variety of aerial bombs during World War II, from small incendiary sticks, weighing just 4 pounds, to monstrous earthquake bombs that could penetrate 60 feet of earth before detonating with the force of a localized earthquake. This video breaks down every important bomb type they dropped across 6 years of devastating global conflict. These weapons rained destruction from the skies, in quantities never before seen in human history, with Allied aircraft dropping over 3 million tons of ordnance on Axis territories between 1939 and 1945. The strategic bombing campaigns conducted by British and American forces alone required nearly 1,500,000 bomber sorties and claimed the lives of approximately 80,000 Allied airmen. From the deserts of North Africa to the frozen reaches of Norway, from the factories of the Ruhr Valley to the wooden cities of Japan, Allied bombs reshaped the landscape of modern warfare. Let us begin with general-purpose bombs, the workhorses of Allied aerial bombardment that accounted for the majority of ordnance dropped throughout the war. The ANM 3,100-pound general-purpose bomb was the smallest standard high-explosive weapon employed by American forces during the conflict, weighing approximately 100 pounds with 54 pounds of explosive filler, typically TNT or amatol. This compact bomb proved ideal for attacks on airfields, light structures, and troop concentrations. Its small size allowed bombers to carry large quantities, with a B-17 Flying Fortress capable of lifting up to 38 of these weapons using cluster adapters that grouped multiple bombs on single release points. The bomb featured a conventional cylindrical body with box-type tail fins for stabilization during descent. American crews employed the ANM-30 extensively during tactical operations supporting ground forces, where saturating an area with numerous smaller explosions often proved more effective than fewer large detonations. During the Normandy campaign of 1944, fighter bombers carrying pairs of these bombs conducted thousands of close support missions against German positions, roads, and supply lines. The ANM-57 250-pound general-purpose bomb entered widespread service in 1943 as part of a new generation of American aerial weapons featuring improved arming mechanisms. Earlier bomb designs suffered from significant reliability problems, with approximately 30% failing to detonate during 1942 operations due to issues with their arming devices. Moisture on airfields often froze fuses during high-altitude flight, preventing proper function upon impact. The ANM-57 addressed these issues with enhanced fusing systems that dramatically improved detonation rates. Instructions were issued to insert fuses only shortly before takeoff as an additional precaution. Weighing 250 pounds with 123 pounds of high explosive, this weapon became a standard choice for attacks on railway infrastructure, light industrial targets, and enemy positions. Fighter bombers like the P-47 Thunderbolt commonly carried pairs of these bombs during ground attack missions across both the European and Pacific theaters. The weapon proved particularly effective during interdiction campaigns against German transportation networks in the months preceding and following the D-Day invasion. The ANM-64 500-pound general-purpose bomb became one of the most widely employed American aerial weapons during the conflict. This medium-weight bomb measured approximately 144 centimeters in length, with a diameter of 36 centimeters. It contained between 118 and 124 kilograms of TNT, or amatol explosive, within a steel casing just under 8 millimeters thick. The ANM-64 proved effective against a wide range of targets, including steel railway bridges, tunnels, concrete docks, and light naval vessels. American heavy bombers typically carried these weapons in large quantities, with a B-17 capable of lifting 16 ANM-64 bombs in its internal bay. The earlier ANM-43, which preceded the M-64 design, remained in service alongside its improved successor throughout the war, with both proving reliable workhorses for the strategic bombing campaign. During daylight precision bombing raids against German industrial targets, formations of hundreds of B-17 seconds and B-24 seconds would release thousands of these bombs in concentrated patterns, overwhelming defenses through sheer volume of ordnance delivered. The M69 1,000-pound general-purpose bomb represented the heaviest standard American aerial weapon regularly employed during the conflict. Development began in 1939 with the goal of creating a bomb containing a higher proportion of explosive to total weight than previous designs. Traditional general-purpose bombs typically contained 50% explosive and 50% casing by weight. The M69 utilized a lighter but stronger steel casing that allowed up to 53% of the bomb's total weight to consist of explosive material. The complete weapon weighed approximately 1,000 pounds with a filling of 530 pounds of high explosive, either TNT or a 50-50 mixture of amatol and TNT. It measured approximately 177 centimeters in length, with a diameter of approximately 46 centimeters, with a casing thickness of approximately 13 millimeters. American forces employed the M69 against reinforced targets, including concrete bridges, steel structures, piers, and medium naval vessels that lighter bombs could not effectively damage. AP-47 Thunderbolt could carry 2 of these weapons externally, while medium bombers like the B-26 Marauder could accommodate 4. The M69 2,000-pound general-purpose bomb provided American forces with heavy demolition capability against the most substantial enemy structures. This massive weapon contained between 480 and 507 kilograms of high explosive within a thick steel casing measuring over 18 centimeters in diameter at its widest point. It proved particularly effective against large industrial facilities, hardened fortifications, and major infrastructure targets that required concentrated explosive force to destroy. The B-17 could carry only 2 of these weapons internally, while the larger B-24 Liberator and B-29 Superfortress could accommodate greater numbers. Crews reserved these heavy bombs for high-value targets where maximum destruction was required, often combining them with smaller weapons to create a mix of penetration and blast effects. The M56 4,000-pound light case bomb represented American efforts to create high-capacity blast weapons similar to British blockbusters. Unlike standard general-purpose bombs with heavy casings designed for penetration, the M56 featured thin walls that maximized explosive content. Weighing approximately 4,000 pounds with over 3,200 pounds of high explosive filling, this weapon delivered tremendous blast effects against urban and industrial areas. The B-17 required modification to carry single examples of these massive weapons, while the B-24 and later B-29 could accommodate them more easily. The British Mark series of general-purpose bombs served the Royal Air Force throughout the conflict, in weights ranging from 250 to 1,000 pounds. These medium-capacity weapons, as the British designated them, typically contained approximately 50% explosive by weight, with amatol, RDX, or Torpex filling depending on availability and target requirements. The 500-pound medium-capacity bomb became the standard British general-purpose weapon, employed extensively during both day and night bombing raids against German targets. British bomb designs differed from American counterparts in several respects, including fusing arrangements and suspension systems, though both nations developed compatible equipment as the combined bomber offensive intensified. British armourers and American ground crews eventually became proficient in handling each other's weapons when operational necessity demanded flexibility. Moving on to incendiary bombs, the weapons specifically designed to start fires proved among the most destructive of the entire conflict, responsible for some of the most devastating raids of the war. The British 4-pound incendiary bomb stands as one of the most devastating weapons ever employed by the Royal Air Force, despite its diminutive size. Developed by Imperial Chemical Industries during the late 1930s, this small device consisted of a hollow hexagonal body made from a magnesium-aluminum alloy with a cast iron or steel nose section filled with thermite incendiary pellets. Upon impact, a detonator ignited a primer which fired the igniter pellets. The magnesium alloy body began melting approximately 25 seconds after ignition and continued burning for up to 10 minutes at temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius, capable of igniting virtually any combustible material. High explosive variants were developed that detonated 2 to 4 minutes after initial ignition, specifically designed to kill firefighters and rescue workers who approached to extinguish the fires. The British dropped approximately 80 millions of these small incendiaries between 1941 and 1945, with Avro-Lancaster bombers alone delivering over 50 million over Germany. Bomber Command carried these weapons in small bomb containers, each capable of holding 90 individual incendiaries. By late 1943, improved cluster projectiles that opened at low altitude provided greater accuracy and concentration. The number 14 cluster could hold 106 bombs, while the number 16 accommodated 236. The 4-pound incendiary formed the backbone of British area bombing strategy, designed to start fires that would spread through urban areas after high-explosive bombs had shattered buildings and broken water mains. By 1944, incendiaries comprised approximately 70% of bomb tonnage in British city attacks. The British 30-pound incendiary bomb entered service toward the end of the conflict, with significantly enhanced capabilities over its smaller predecessor. A small parachute retarded its fall, and upon impact the weapon produced an extremely hot flame extending approximately 15 feet in all directions. This flame burned for roughly 2 minutes at temperatures claimed capable of crumbling brick walls. The Royal Air Force dubbed this weapon the Super Flamer for propaganda purposes. It was officially designated the Incendiary Bomb 30-pound Type J Mark I. Between 1941 and 1945, British forces dropped approximately 3 million of these larger incendiary devices alongside the more numerous 4-pound weapons, typically using them against industrial targets requiring more concentrated fire-starting capability. The M69 napalm incendiary bomblet became the most important American fire weapon of the Pacific War, and one of the most destructive munitions ever employed against urban areas. Created by the Standard Oil Development Company with funding from the Office of Scientific Research and Development, work began in early October 1941, almost exactly 2 months before the attack on Pearl Harbor. The original motivation was finding an alternative to magnesium, which was in short supply. This weapon earned the nickname Tokyo Calling Card from American crews who knew exactly what destruction it would cause. The M69 consisted of a plain steel pipe with a hexagonal cross-section, measuring 3 inches in diameter and 20 inches in length. It weighed approximately 6 pounds and used napalm, a jellied gasoline mixture thickened with special chemicals into a gel, as its incendiary filler, rather than the thermite or magnesium employed in earlier designs. Napalm burned less intensely but more efficiently than thermite, proving more difficult to extinguish while delivering more destructive energy per pound of weight. The gel adhered to surfaces and resisted suppression efforts. American B-29 Superfortress bombers carried these weapons in E-46 cluster bombs, each containing 38 individual M69 bomblets. A typical B-29 load consisted of 40 clusters, delivering 1,520 bomblets per aircraft. Upon release, the clusters opened at approximately 2,000 feet above ground level. Cloth streamers stabilized each bomblet during descent and oriented it nose down, while also arming the weapon by pulling out safety plungers. After impact, the bomb waited 3 to 5 seconds before a burster charge severed the bands and ejected a stream of burning napalm up to 300 feet horizontally. This delayed action and horizontal flame projection proved devastatingly effective against the wood and paper construction prevalent in Japanese cities. Testing of these weapons against mock German and Japanese houses at WWII Proving Ground in Utah demonstrated that 68% of Japanese-style structures were beyond fireguard control within 6 minutes. During Operation Meeting House on the night of March 9th and 10th, 1945, over 300 B-29 seconds dropped 1,665 tons of incendiaries on Tokyo, primarily M69 bomblets, delivered in E-46 clusters. General Curtis LeMay had made the controversial decision to strip defensive armament from many aircraft to increase bomb loads and attack at low altitude at night. The resulting firestorm destroyed nearly 16 square miles of the city, consuming over 267,000 buildings, killing an estimated 87,000 civilians according to the post-war Strategic Bombing Survey, and rendering over 1 million homeless in the single deadliest air raid in history, exceeding even the atomic bombings that would follow months later. 16B 29 seconds were lost, primarily to operational causes and anti-aircraft fire rather than fighters. Follow-up raids in the first 10 days of March devastated Nagoya, Osaka, and Kobe using identical tactics. The ANM-47 100-pound incendiary bomb provided American forces with a heavier fire weapon for use against less vulnerable targets requiring more penetration. Filled with a petroleum-based incendiary mixture, this weapon proved effective against industrial facilities and storage areas, where the smaller M69 might not penetrate protective structures. American forces employed the M47 alongside the M69 during the initial firebombing campaign against Japanese cities in early 1945, using the heavier weapon against targets with more substantial construction. Continuing with high-capacity bombs, the massive blast weapons designed to cause maximum destruction through explosive force rather than penetration. The British 4,000-pound high-capacity bomb, commonly known as the Cookie or Blockbuster, represented a revolutionary approach to aerial bombardment when it entered service. Unlike conventional bombs designed for a balance of penetration and blast effect, the Cookie consisted of little more than a thin cylindrical casing packed with explosive. This high-capacity design allowed the weapon to contain approximately 3,000 pounds of amatol, RDX, or Torpex, representing roughly 75% explosive content by weight compared to 50% in standard medium-capacity bombs. The Cookie measured approximately 9 feet in length, with a diameter of approximately 30 inches. Its unaerodynamic drum shape, with simple cylindrical casing and flat ends without streamlined nose or conventional fins, meant it fell essentially straight down when released. Bomber Command designed the Cookie specifically for its blast effect rather than penetration, intending it to blow roofs off buildings and shatter structures so that following waves of incendiary bombs could reach building interiors unimpeded and start fires that would spread rapidly. The Wellington bomber first carried the 4,000-pound Cookie operationally during a strike on Emden in April 1941, requiring removal of the bomb beam from its bomb bay and cutting a slot in the bomb doors through which the weapon protruded. The weapon later became standard equipment for RAF heavy night bombers, with the fast de Havilland Mosquito of the Light Night Strike Force often carrying single Cookies to Berlin and back, sometimes conducting 2 sorties in a single night with different crews. The British 8,000-pound high-capacity bomb doubled the destructive power of the original Cookie by essentially joining 2 4,000-pound weapons together. This massive bomb could only be carried by the Avro Lancaster, which required slightly modified bulged bomb bay doors to accommodate it. The first operational use came when Lancasters of 15 Squadron attacked Berlin on December 2, 1943. The 8,000-pounder delivered devastating blast effects that could destroy entire city blocks when combined with incendiary follow-up attacks. These weapons saw significant use as Bomber Command intensified its area offensive against German cities during the final years of the conflict. The British 12,000-pound high-capacity bomb represented the ultimate development of the blockbuster concept, comprising 3 4,000-pound sections joined together. This weapon carried approximately 9,000 pounds of high explosive. Only the Lancaster could lift this massive bomb, and its use required further modification of the aircraft's bomb bay doors. Smaller numbers of these weapons saw service during the final years of the conflict against major German cities, delivering blast effects that complemented the more specialized penetrating bombs being developed simultaneously by Barnes Wallis. Next on the list is earthquake bombs, the revolutionary deep penetration weapons designed by British engineer Barnes Wallis that could destroy targets conventional bombs could not touch regardless of how many were dropped. The Tallboy, officially designated Bomb Medium Capacity 12,000 pounds, stands among the most effective precision weapons of the entire conflict. Barnes Wallis began developing the earthquake bomb concept in 1941, presenting his ideas in a paper titled A Note on a Method of Attacking the Axis Powers. Wallis understood that a very large bomb exploding deep underground near a target would transmit shock waves through the earth far more effectively than an airburst. This seismic effect could collapse foundations and destroy structures that conventional bombs simply bounced off or penetrated only superficially. The Tallboy measured 21 feet in length with a maximum diameter of 38 inches. Its hardened steel casing exceeded 3.5 inches thick at the nose, specifically designed to withstand the tremendous forces of impact at supersonic velocity without breaking apart. The weapon weighed approximately 12,000 pounds, though the term referred to the bomb's nominal class rather than exact weight, and carried 5,200 pounds of Tirpitz explosive, a mixture approximately 50% more powerful than TNT that proved ideal for the task. Tail fins were canted slightly to impart spin during descent, improving accuracy and stability while preventing tumbling. Released from the optimum altitude of 18,000 feet, the Tallboy took 37 seconds to reach the ground, achieving a terminal velocity of approximately 750 miles per hour, just below the speed of sound. Upon impact, the bomb could penetrate up to 80 feet of earth, or 16 feet of reinforced concrete before detonating. The resulting explosion created a crater 80 feet deep and 100 feet across. The weapon's design meant even near misses proved effective, as the seismic shock could damage foundations up to 150 yards from the impact point, causing structures to collapse into the resulting underground cavity, or camouflet. The Tallboy first saw action on June 8 and 9, 1944, when 19 Lancasters of 617 Squadron attacked the Saumur railway tunnel in France. One bomb penetrated 18 meters of hillside before exploding inside the tunnel approximately 60 feet below the surface, completely blocking it and preventing German panzer reinforcements from reaching the Normandy beachheads from the south of France. The weapon's most famous achievement came on November 12, 1944, during Operation Catechism, when Lancasters operating at maximum range from Scottish bases attacked the German battleship Tirpitz, moored in Norwegian fjords. Flying from Lossiemouth with stripped-down aircraft to maximize range, crews from 9 and 617 squadrons released their Tallboys against the massive warship. 2 bombs struck directly with additional near misses, and the 40,000-ton battleship capsized in the harbour, finally ending the threat that had tied down significant Royal Navy resources for years. Other notable Tallboy targets included the massive concrete V-weapon sites being constructed in northern France, U-boat pens with reinforced concrete roofs over 12 feet thick, and strategic transportation infrastructure. Over 850 Tallboys were dropped during the war. Only specially modified Lancasters of 9 and 617 squadrons could carry the weapon, requiring removal of bomb bay doors and installation of the advanced SABS Mark II, a bomb sight for the precision necessary to deliver such expensive and time-consuming weapons accurately. Crews were instructed to bring the bomb home if they could not achieve proper conditions for release, a unique requirement reflecting the weapon's value. The Grand Slam, officially designated Bomb Medium Capacity 22,000 pounds, represented the ultimate expression of Barnes Wallis earthquake bomb concept and remains the largest conventional bomb ever used in combat. Development was authorized in July 1944, when trials demonstrated the Lancaster could carry an even heavier weapon than the Tallboy. The Grand Slam measured over 25 feet in length, nearly 8 meters, with a diameter of nearly 4 feet or approximately 1.2 meters. It weighed approximately 22,000 pounds and contained 9,135 pounds of Tirpitz explosive. The bomb casing was cast in a single piece using a sand mold with concrete core, an extraordinary manufacturing achievement accomplished by Vickers at their River Don works in Sheffield, one of the very few forges capable of handling such massive components. Like the Tallboy, molten Tirpitz was poured into the casing and required an entire month to cool and set properly. When dropped from altitude, the Grand Slam achieved near supersonic velocity and could penetrate over 20 feet of reinforced concrete. The first operational use came on March 14, 1945, when squadron leader C.C. Calder of 617 Squadron attacked the Bielefeld Viaduct in Germany. 28 Lancasters carried Tallboys, while Calder's specially modified B Mark I Special carried the first operational Grand Slam. Dropping from 12,000 feet, lower than optimal due to cloud cover, the 10-ton weapon struck the ground approximately 80 feet from one of the viaduct pillars. The aircraft leapt upward 500 feet as the massive weight released. 11 seconds later, the delayed action fuse triggered a tremendous underground explosion that created a crater over 100 feet deep. The resulting seismic effect undermined the viaduct's foundations, and when the dust cleared, more than 400 feet of both parallel viaducts, 5 complete arches, had collapsed. Only the specially modified Lancaster B Mark I Special could carry the Grand Slam. These aircraft had bomb bay doors removed entirely, so the bomb hung semi-recessed beneath the fuselage, undercarriage strengthened to handle the increased weight, and both front and mid-upper gun turrets removed and faired over to reduce weight. The standard crew was reduced to 5 men, with no mid-upper gunner or wireless operator. Only 41 Grand Slams were dropped operationally before the war ended, but these weapons achieved results that thousands of conventional bombs could not match, destroying railway viaducts, bridges, and submarine pens that had withstood years of bombardment. The upkeep bouncing bomb represents one of the most innovative weapons ever developed and formed the basis for the legendary Dambusters raid. Barnes Wallis conceived the idea of a bomb that could skip across water to breach dams that conventional attack could not damage, experimenting by bouncing marbles across a water tub in his garden. Dropped at precisely 60 feet altitude while traveling at 232 miles per hour, the cylindrical weapon would spin backward at 500 revolutions per minute before release, imparted by a belt-driven system powered by an auxiliary motor in the aircraft. This backspin caused the bomb to skip across the water surface, passing over torpedo nets that protected the dams. Upon striking the dam face, the residual spin would drive the weapon down the wall of the structure, before a hydrostatic fuse detonated it at a depth of 30 feet, directing the full force of the explosion against the dam at its most vulnerable point. The upkeep weighed over 9,000 pounds and contained 6,600 pounds of Torpex explosive. Determining precise altitude proved challenging since barometric altimeters lacked sufficient accuracy at 60 feet. Engineers solved this problem by mounting 2 spotlights beneath the aircraft, angled to converge at exactly 60 feet below, giving pilots a visual reference point on the water surface. On the night of May 16th and 17th, 1943, 133 aircrew in 19 specially modified Lancasters of the newly formed 617 Squadron conducted Operation Chastise against dams in Germany's Ruhr Valley. Wing Commander Guy Gibson led the attack at just 24 years of age, having already flown over 170 combat sorties. The Mona Dam was breached after 5 aircraft delivered their weapons, with Gibson himself making repeated passes to draw defensive fire away from subsequent attackers. The breach measured approximately 250 feet wide, releasing approximately 330 million tons of water into the western Ruhr region. The remaining aircraft with unused weapons then attacked the Eder Dam, which finally collapsed at 1:52 in the morning after 3 more attacks. The Sorp Dam, of different earthen construction, was also attacked but remained intact. The operation cost 8 aircraft and 53 aircrew killed, with another 3 becoming prisoners of war. On the ground, approximately 1,600 civilians died in the resulting floods, including around 1,000 prisoners and slave labourers. Gibson was awarded the Victoria Cross, and 32 other aircrew received honours. The raid's strategic impact remains debated among historians, but it dealt a severe blow to German morale, forced diversion of significant resources for repairs and increased dam defences, and demonstrated that innovative weapons could achieve results previously thought impossible. 617 Squadron was retained as a specialist precision bombing unit, later employing the Tallboy and Grand Slam earthquake bombs against hardened targets throughout Europe. Let us move on to anti-submarine weapons, the bombs and charges that helped win the crucial Battle of the Atlantic against German U-boats that nearly strangled Britain's supply lines. The Mark VII depth charge served as the Royal Navy's primary anti-submarine weapon for surface ships and was subsequently adapted for aerial use by Coastal Command aircraft hunting submarines across the Atlantic and beyond. Designated Type D before the war, it weighed approximately 450 pounds and contained 290 pounds of amatol explosive in a cylindrical steel drum. Initial sinking speed proved inadequate for attacking submarines that could dive rapidly, reaching only about 7 feet per second, with a terminal velocity of approximately 10 feet per second at depth, if rolled off stern racks. In late 1940, cast iron weights of 150 pounds were attached to increase sinking velocity to nearly 17 feet per second, critical for attacking submarines before they could descend beyond lethal range. New hydrostatic pistols extended the maximum detonation depth to 900 feet, allowing attacks against deeply submerged boats. The Mark VII's charge was estimated capable of splitting a 7/8-inch submarine pressure hull at a distance of 20 feet and forcing a submarine to surface at twice that distance. The change from Amatol to Torpex or Minol explosive in late 1942 significantly increased lethality, with the kill radius expanding from 20 feet to approximately 26 feet for a direct pressure hull rupture and 52 feet for forcing surfacing. For aerial use, the Mark VII was modified with a streamlined nose fairing and stabilizing tail fins, entering service as the Mark VII airborne depth charge in 1941 after earlier 100-pound anti-submarine bombs proved completely inadequate. Indeed, on September 5, 1939, just days after war began, a Royal Air Force Avro Anson was destroyed when its own anti-submarine bomb skipped off the water surface and detonated beneath the aircraft. RAF Coastal Command aircraft employed the improved Mark VII extensively during the long struggle against German U-boats in the Atlantic, though accuracy remained problematic until techniques improved. The American Mark IX depth charge entered service in the spring of 1943, bringing significant improvements over earlier American designs. Its teardrop streamlined shape provided superior hydrodynamic performance, achieving sinking speeds of over 14 feet per second, that later versions increased to nearly 23 feet per second, with improved streamlining and added weight. The Mark IX contained 200 pounds of Torpex explosive with hydrostatic fuses settable to depths up to 600 feet, later extended to 1,000 feet. Earlier American depth charges, like the Mark IV and Mark VII, weighed approximately 600 pounds, with larger charges but slower sinking rates. Although their explosions proved nerve-wracking to submarine crews, an undamaged pressure hull would not rupture unless the charge detonated closer than approximately 15 feet, and placing weapons within this range was largely a matter of chance, as targets maneuvered evasively. Most submarines destroyed by depth charges succumbed to accumulated damage from prolonged barrages rather than single hits. American destroyers and destroyer escorts typically carried Mark IX depth charges on stern racks and fired them from K-gun projectors that could throw charges 60 to 175 yards to the side of the ship with flight times of approximately 3 to 5 seconds. This allowed vessels to lay patterns of 9 or 10 charges over a suspected submarine's position. Success rates improved dramatically as the war progressed, rising from approximately 3% damaged or sunk early in the conflict to around 30% damaged and 30% sunk by war's end. The Hedgehog forward-throwing anti-submarine mortar represented a revolutionary improvement in submarine warfare that transformed escort vessel effectiveness. Developed by the Royal Navy's Directorate of Miscellaneous Weapons Development, this weapon addressed a fundamental limitation of depth charge attacks. Sonar systems of the period could not track submarines directly beneath the attacking vessel because the time for the sound pulse to return was too short for operators to distinguish. This blind spot allowed submarines to make evasive maneuvers undetected during the final moments before depth charges arrived. The Hedgehog fired up to 24 small spigot mortar projectiles ahead of an attacking ship, while the submarine remained detectable on sonar. Each projectile carried a 35-pound Torpex charge within a 7.1-inch diameter casing and weighed approximately 65 pounds total. The spigots were angled so projectiles would land in a circular pattern approximately 100 feet in diameter, roughly 200 yards ahead of the launching vessel. Critically, the Hedgehog employed contact fuses rather than depth fuses, meaning detonation occurred only when striking a submarine's hull directly. This seemingly demanding requirement actually improved effectiveness dramatically because crews received immediate feedback. A detonation confirmed a hit, while silence indicated a miss, allowing immediate reattack while still in contact, rather than waiting for depth charges to explode at preset depths. During the war, British depth charge attacks achieved kills in only 1 out of approximately 60 attacks, a ratio of 60 to 1. The Hedgehog achieved kills in 1 of every 5.7 attacks, more than 10 times as effective. The weapon entered service in 1942 and gradually proved its worth as crews gained experience with proper tactics. Early use was so infrequent that the Navy issued directives requiring captains to report why they had not employed Hedgehog against underwater contacts. After better training and ship-wide talks on successful attack examples, kill rates improved considerably. The Mark 24 mine, actually an acoustic homing torpedo despite its misleading designation chosen for security reasons, became the first successful air-dropped homing weapon in history. Nicknamed FIDO by crews who knew its true nature, this remarkable device weighed 680 pounds and measured 19 inches in diameter. It could detect and home on the sound of a submarine's propellers, pursuing targets autonomously after being dropped from patrol aircraft without any guidance from the launching plane. FIDO could not catch a surfaced submarine at full speed given its relatively slow underwater velocity, but proved deadly against submerged boats that could only travel at limited speeds on battery power. When combined with radar that could detect surfaced U-boats at night or in poor visibility, forcing them to dive, the FIDO transformed the effectiveness of anti-submarine patrol aircraft. Submarines that had previously been safe from air attack once submerged now faced a weapon that could follow them down. Finally, we have atomic bombs, the weapons that ended the war and changed the nature of warfare forever, introducing destructive power that made all previous bombs seem insignificant by comparison. Little Boy holds the grim distinction of being the first nuclear weapon ever used in warfare. This gun-type fission bomb used highly enriched uranium as its fissile material in a relatively simple design. A conventional artillery gun barrel fired a hollow cylinder of uranium-235, designated the bullet, into a solid cylinder of the same material, and designated the target. When the two subcritical masses joined at high velocity, they formed a supercritical mass that initiated a nuclear chain reaction. Little Boy measured 10 feet in length, with a diameter of 28 inches, and weighed approximately 9,000 pounds. The weapon contained 64 kilograms, or 141 pounds, of uranium-235, though less than 1 kilogram actually underwent fission due to the design's inherent inefficiency. Despite this, the explosion released energy equivalent to approximately 15,000 tons of TNT, or 15 kilotons. Scientists had such confidence in the gun-type design's fundamental simplicity that Little Boy was never tested before use. The only nuclear weapon design ever employed in combat without prior testing, the weapon was considered so dangerous that cordite propellant was not loaded into the gun barrel until after takeoff, to prevent accidental detonation in case of crash or fire. On August 6, 1945, the B-29 Superfortress Enola Gay, piloted by Colonel Paul Tirpitz of the 509th Composite Group, released Little Boy over Hiroshima, Japan, at an altitude of approximately 31,000 feet at 9:15 local time. The bomb detonated 44 seconds later at 1,968 feet above the city, approximately 550 feet from the designated aim point of the Aoi Bridge. The explosion destroyed approximately 5 square miles of the flat city, with the lethal zone where shockwave overpressure exceeded 5 pounds per square inch, extending 2.2 miles in diameter. An estimated 70,000 people were killed immediately, with total deaths reaching approximately 140,000 by year's end due to burns, injuries, and radiation effects. Fat Man was the second and more powerful nuclear weapon used in warfare, employing a fundamentally different and more complex implosion design. Rather than bringing two masses of fissile material together in a gun barrel, Fat Man surrounded a subcritical sphere of plutonium-239, approximately the size of a softball, with over 5,300 pounds of precisely shaped high-explosive lenses. When detonated simultaneously with microsecond precision, these explosives compressed the plutonium core from softball size to approximately tennis ball size, achieving supercritical density through compression rather than assembly. The implosion design was so complex and the tolerances so demanding that scientists required a full-scale test before committing to combat use to ensure the weapon would actually function. The Trinity test on July 16, 1945, at the Alamogordo Bombing and Gunnery Range in New Mexico, proved the concept worked, producing a yield of approximately 21 kilotons. Fat Man measured 10 feet 8 inches in length with a diameter of 60 inches, significantly wider than the cylindrical Little Boy, due to the spherical arrangement of explosive lenses surrounding the plutonium core. It weighed approximately 10,300 pounds. The bomb contained approximately 13.6 pounds of plutonium-239 at its center. Unlike Little Boy, Fat Man was assembled over a period of days before use, and batteries powering the detonation system would deteriorate if the weapon remained in assembled state too long. On August 9, 1945, the B-29 Boxcar, piloted by Major Charles Sweeney, with Commander Frederick Ashworth as weaponeer, carried Fat Man toward its primary target of Kokura Arsenal. Finding that city obscured by clouds and smoke drifting from a massive firebombing raid on nearby Yahata the previous day, Sweeney made 3 unsuccessful bomb runs over 50 minutes, while anti-aircraft fire increased and fuel ran low due to a malfunctioning transfer pump that prevented access to 640 gallons in a reserve tank. With Japanese fighters reportedly scrambling, Sweeney diverted to the secondary target of Nagasaki. That city too was obscured by clouds until Bombardier Captain Kermit Beahan found a hole in the overcast at the last moment. Fat Man detonated at approximately 1,650 feet above the city at 11:02 local time with a yield of approximately 21 kilotons of TNT equivalent, more powerful than Little Boy, despite being off target by approximately 2 miles from the designated aim point. The hilly terrain of Nagasaki limited destruction compared to flat Hiroshima, with the hypocenter located in a valley that contained the blast somewhat. An estimated 35,000 to 40,000 people died immediately, with total deaths reaching 60,000 to 80,000 by year's end. Japan announced its surrender 6 days later, on August 15, 1945. The Allied bombing campaigns deployed aerial weapons in ways that maximized their effectiveness across 6 years of global conflict. From the smallest 4-pound incendiary sticks that ignited firestorms, consuming entire cities, to the revolutionary earthquake bombs that collapsed targets conventional weapons could not touch, Allied ordnance demonstrated remarkable variety and capability. General-purpose bombs evolved from simple, high-explosive filled casings with unreliable fuses into sophisticated weapons with improved arming mechanisms and optimized blast effects. Incendiary weapons progressed from thermite-filled bomblets to napalm devices, specifically engineered to destroy the wood and paper construction of Japanese cities. High-capacity blast bombs reached 12,000 pounds, while maintaining thin casings that maximized explosive content. Deep penetration weapons achieved what years of conventional bombing could not, destroying hardened targets through seismic shock rather than direct impact. Anti-submarine weapons evolved from simple depth charges rolled off stern racks to forward-throwing mortars and acoustic homing torpedoes that revolutionized ocean warfare. The atomic bombs that ended the conflict introduced destructive power previously unimaginable, single weapons accomplishing what thousands of conventional bombs could not approach. This video has covered the major bomb types employed by Allied forces during World War II, from the ubiquitous 500-pound general-purpose bomb that formed the backbone of strategic operations, to the specialized earthquake weapons that sank the Tirpitz and collapsed reinforced viaducts. Each weapon played its role in the greatest conflict in human history. The strategic bombing campaign against Germany dropped nearly 2,700,000 tons of bombs, flew over 1,400,000 bomber sorties, and cost the lives of over 55,000 British and approximately 26,000 American airmen. In the Pacific, B-29 superfortresses delivered approximately 160,000 tons of bombs against Japan, with incendiary raids destroying vast areas of more than 60 cities. The legacy of these weapons continues to influence military aviation and international law decades after the final bombs fell in August 1945.